The Sisters of Fate could not control him. And on this day, the man, the legend, Kratos, will have his revenge.
So I've just finished replaying God of War 3 recently, and it was an interesting experience to say the least, especially with how God of War changes over the years. The most notable thing is, man, I forgot how bombastic this game was, holy sh**.
I will have my revenge!
No one has an indoor voice, thunderous orchestra is almost in every scene, titanic creatures roam in the background, sprawling massive landscapes that make you feel so tiny in the grand scheme of things, and Kratos being, well, Kratos. After playing the new God of War, I haven't played Ragnarok yet though because I have no money. It does make me appreciate that instead of going even bigger as sequels do, they instead go smaller, grounded, and more intimate. But enough about God of War 2018. How does God of War 3 holds up? Well...
My vengeance ends now.
God of War 3 goes balls to the walls with the word epic. It was supposed to be the end of the God of War trilogy after all. Nakamiches at Olympus, Ghost of Sparta, and Ascension, a bunch of mobile games. And it did not hold back. It's bigger, bloodier, and gorier than any God of War game ever made so far. And I doubt Ragnarok gonna challenge this. Anyway, it's fun to go back to around these times, when the game industry was a whole lot edgier.
I've lived as a warrior. I have died as a god.
Presentation-wise, the game still holds up pretty well. Well, there's a bunch of blurry textures, low-res pre-rendered cutscenes, and also a bunch of weird visual glitches in the remastered version. The game still runs and looks great. The strong art style really helps with that, with its comic book character designs and its epic grand sense of scale. The environments that Kratos traversed looks awesome back in the day, and it's still awesome to this day. The scale, boy, the scale of everything is so huge. It's so grand, so epic. It really feels like you're in a Greek epic, just with a more comic book feel. The level designs that are in this game, that while not as varied as the older titles with a lot of backtracking through old places that you've been through, doesn't feel bad or boring because the 8 hours I spent in this game feels like a breeze with a lot of variety in the gameplay. Reminiscent of a Hideki Kamiya game, with things like platforming, puzzles, mild exploration where you find collectibles to increase your power, durability, all the good stuff in a character action game. A quote-unquote on-rails flying sections where you have to avoid objects that are in your way. Hey Hideki Kamiya, how I missed you. But also nothing new to the franchise. And also because this is classic God of War, you're focused on one thing and one thing only. Well, at least Kratos is. And that is killing gods. Deicide. And this time, every Olympians are on the Chopper Chopper block. Especially Zeus. Especially Zeus! And so his minions. Kratos are a body count in this game and not just in one way if you know what I mean. But also puzzles, you know, to break up the pace. They're mostly pretty easy except this one time where the game bugged out and I have to push the stairs again because it didn't proc the first time. But other than that, there's nothing really notable about them. It's there to break up the ultra violence and have some downtime. But I do hate how the old God of War games can't falling from platforms as death. It's such a cheap feeling when you die from falling off during the platforming sections, especially how finicky the Icarus wings work sometimes. This comes to a head during the part where you chase Hermes in a chase sequence, where Kratos has to swing and then use the wings to glide across a chasm to the bridge where Hermes stands on. I fell off an embarrassing amount of times here, simply because of how finicky the wings are being at the time. It's probably just me, but the fact that they count them in your death count kinda annoyed me, but it's no big deal. I'm just glad that games of these types nowadays will only punish you with damage instead of an instant death.
Zeus! You...
Hey buddy, I think you got the wrong door. The leather club's 2 blocks down.
It's still funny to me though that Kratos can die from getting ringed out by some jobbers while being able to beat the absolute shit out of gods and demigods. And talking about beating the absolute shit out of things, probably gonna say something controversial, but this is what I genuinely feel. I like the combat here better than the one in 2018. Everything just feels more responsive, you know? Like, I know the Kratos is older and more sluggish compared to him in his prime, but that's just what I feel. Especially with how the cooldown system works in that game, where you have to wait instead of getting into your enemy's face and rip them off so you can do more magic to rip more faces off faster. But enough about God of War 2018, I'll save that for a later video. So yeah, the combat in this game is fun, like really fun. Kratos is the most mobile he's ever been. Wait, is it called agile? Oh, Kratos moves fast in this game, and he has a lot of movement options. From your basic dodges and double jumps, launchers included, to things like air dashes, helm breakers, chain grapple bringers, movers, I don't know what to call it, godbringer, and grappling an enemy, then making a man-shaped battering ram out of them. There's a lot that Kratos can do in combat. While it doesn't reach the complexity of DMC's combat, it's the closest DMC has ever been. Kratos has 4 weapons this time. Well, it's mostly just chains and whatever, which is not that great, but they feel great to use though. The sound and visual effects of the weapons are spectacular to behold, and watching them rip and tear enemies apart with blood and guts filling the screen, ooh, it just feels so good. I notice how much of a psychopath I sound in this clip. Please don't call the cops on me. Oh my god! Kratos combos are pretty basic in their inputs. Most combos are inputted by just pressing square and then ending with a triangle, which is the heavy attack button. His iconic weapons, you know which ones, this time are called the Blades of Exile. After his Blades of Athena got rusted out by Spookies. What I really like about the Blades of whatever is that the combos stay pretty consistent through all the games, including 2018. Spoilers? This is the best version so far. As I say time and time again, I haven't played Ragnarok. Maybe it's even better there. Who knows? I'm not gonna look it up. The blades here are so fun to use, to the point that they're probably the most effective weapon in the entire game. Hordes of undead get slashed to bits, and bigger enemy types like minotaurs getting thrown around like a sack of potatoes when they get hit by the harder hitting combos. It also has a bunch of screenbuster attacks for when you get surrounded. What does Kratos do when he gets surrounded? He turns into a Beyblade, of course. Meanwhile, Hades' chain focuses more on summoning shit to destroy your enemies. From Lost Souls cameos when you use the Godbringer attack, yes, I'm just gonna call the move that now, and its magic attack. Its primary attack focuses more on crowd control, even compared to the Blades of Exodia, with a lot of attacks that explode and summon things that will ruin your enemy's day. To be very honest, I don't use this weapon all that much, because of how similar it is to the Blades of Excalibur, and I just like those weapons much more. The third weapon that Kratos gets is the Nemean Cestus. Is it Nemean, whatever. Comment below if you want to correct me. The Nemean Cestus, which while dumb looking, is super fun to use. With it being the Beowulf Gilgamesh of the game, just switch out the charge attacks with massive shockwaves. This weapon is my go-to secondary weapon. Not because it's mandatory to use them sometimes when you're fighting the Onyx enemies, but simply because it's just fun to use, and it's also actually different compared to the other 3 weapons that you have. It's a big fist weapon with a big dumb lion face on the business end of it. So as with other fist weapons in other games, it's a lot more focused on crushing enemies one-on-one with higher baseline damage instead of wide AoEs. Definitely on my top 10 genders. But it does have its own crowd control attacks that, while much slower compared to the other 3 weapons, it gets the job done, especially against the Onyx enemies, which usually requires you to do finishers on certain types of enemies to make them weak enough for you to kill them. The 4th weapon is the Nemesis Whip, the one I use the least, mostly for puzzle and combo filler, because of its lockdown capabilities, but nothing else other than that. I don't know what to talk about this weapon, so we move on. Onto the universal moves that Kratos has. Here, Kratos can weapon switch mid-combo. It's fun to use, if only because of how outstanding the presentation is. It does help that the attack you're switching in with will most likely be a screen buster, so you'll be safe from attacks most of the time. Every weapon also has different Godbringers and magic attacks. With Blades of X-Arm, it makes you body check the enemy while throwing yourself at them. I like how the camera zooms in, and there's a tiny slow-mo to make you really feel it. And his magic attack summons Spookies of Spartans to protect you from damage and hurts everyone around you. Meanwhile, the Hades chain allows you to summon Lost Souls from the enemies, with his magic attack allowing you to summon an enemy for an attack, which you can change after you upgrade this weapon. The Cestus, meanwhile, going all "get over here," then punching their face off. It doesn't work on all enemies, unfortunately. and his magic attack making Kratos pound the ground for a bunch of powerful shockwaves that blows back enemies. And the Nemesis Whip. Its Godbringer move is basically the reverse of Blade of Exvius, with it pulling enemies towards you, and its magic attack being a chain lightning attack that can stagger a bunch of baddies. All of these Godbringer moves brings a lot of options to the table, and not just for mobility's sake, and all of them were pretty fun to use, and it allows the player to express themselves in more ways during combat. Oh, the grapple moves are back, and what can I say more about this? You grab, you run over a bunch of dudes, you grab, you rip and tear. It's the tried and true and should I say iconic part of the God of War series' combat loop. That when you see the giant red circle above your enemies, you know it's time. While I do have to say that the QTEs does break the pace of combat a little bit, it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. They are all really brutally awesome to witness, and they're actually practical this time. Because other than extra orbs you get, some finishers will actually hurt other enemies around you, and that's really fun. It's another chess piece for the players to strategize and think when and who they should finish off first. For defensive options, Kratos can dodge as usual, which has a ton of iframes, but the dodge does feel pretty clunky, and sometimes goes a bit too far, which is why I prefer the other defensive option. Carrying over from God of War 2, Kratos also has a parry, and it's pretty great. Kratos this time no longer uses the blades to block attacks, instead he goes all in on the Golden Fleece. The parry timing itself is pretty lenient compared to something like a Royal Guard from DMC, and it can also parry projectiles and fires it back at the sender, which includes a Gorgon's petrifying gaze. I prefer it to the dodge, as it's generally more reliable, especially because of the lenient timing. And also parrying melee attacks rewards you with option selects, such as a knockback attack or a launcher. While I do prefer if the parry timing is a bit tighter, what we got is fine, especially because the dodge isn't as good as it could be.
Hello, I am under the water. Please help me.
This time, Kratos also has a bunch of other equipment at his disposal, similar to Dante's arsenal of guns. They're in a whole different category of weapons, kind of. They can be used for combat, puzzles, and traversal. Though their use are limited by a bar that refills pretty quickly when you're not using it, Kratos gets equipment throughout the story just like the normal weapons, so there's no need to worry about missing an equipment. They're pretty varied in design and use. The first one that Kratos gets is Apollo's bow, who's been weirdly missing throughout the entire series. Helios is there though, but he probably wishes he took a rain check. This bow is pretty basic. It's a bow that if you charge it, it sets enemies on fire. But the fact that Kratos is able to shoot arrows with the rate of an AR-15 makes it Kratos' equivalent of Ebony and Ivory, being your go-to range opener or for juggling. But it's kinda hard to do that, because the game doesn't have a lock-on system, which is something I have to knock God of War off for, as it makes things like grappling the baddies you want annoying, because sometimes Kratos decides to target someone that's ungrabbable. Wait, is that how you say it? Which makes Kratos stumble around like a drunken asshole, completely defenseless, and also makes juggling baddies with a bow an RNG affair. The second equipment is Helios' head, which acts like a lantern slash flashbang. Its main thing that when you take it out, you can use it as a flashlight in dark sections, and also to reveal secrets. In combat, its role is to stun the baddies so you can wail on them without any risk. This stun attack can also make intangible enemy types tangible. You can also charge it to make a big flash that blinds everyone around Kratos, while also lighting the area for a few seconds. The third equipment are the Shoes of Hermes, which you borrow from him. These shoes make you go fast, Sonic fast. They're mostly used for running up and alongside walls, but during combat, it can be used as a gap closer, where Kratos runs into them like the Kool-Aid Man on God steroids, and gets you up close real fast. Though, I feel that the Godbringer attacks are better for this, because you're completely invincible during those actions. But, enough about that shit. The best thing about the shoes is the air dash that you get. It's fast, it's reliable, and it's universal, meaning that you don't have to equip them. All you have to do is just dodge in midair and poof, air dash. This thing gives Kratos so much mobility in the air. I love it, I love it. It's such a good idea to make it universal. And that's it for the equipment. Well, there's one that I thought was an equipment, but it turns out it was just a key item, nothing more. Needless to say, I was kinda disappointed. But it's nothing that a bag of Cheetos couldn't fix. Like all good character action games and previous entries, Kratos has a rage mode called Rage of Sparta now. Pretty self-explanatory, but it's a bit different compared to the one in the past, or DMC's Devil Trigger. This time, Kratos whips out his biggest dick, the Blade of Olympus, and starts swinging around, making mincemeat out of everyone around him. Except these guys, for some reason. Oh yeah, a bunch of satyrs can block a blade that can kill titans. Yeah, that makes sense, I guess. But other than that, I don't have much to say about the Rage of Sparta. Except that it's an I win button because of how potent it is. Except against the satyrs, for some reason. It's pretty inoffensive, and I have no strong feelings about it. Except that I prefer enhanced state power-ups like Devil Trigger. It's a rage mode. It's pretty basic. It's mid. Moving on. Alright, what's next on the list? Style system? Oh wait, there's not a lot in this. Okay. The style system works like this. The more the combo meter go up, the more red orbs you get. It's pretty basic compared to what we get now. But it's there to incentivize longer combos and not getting hit. There's no actual style meter though, unfortunately. Which I firmly believe should be added to every character action game in existence. Just having the style meter is super motivating for me to play really well and be stylish in beating the baddies. And talking about the baddies...
No! No!
God of War 3 has pretty much all the enemy types that you want in a character action game. You got the small baddies that can dogpile you, the medium baddies, and the big baddies. And the super big baddies. There's a lot of variety here. All of the enemies are easily recognizable design-wise, which is very important in an action game like this. That way, you can strategize and prioritize which enemy to Roblox first, and also which one to look out for. And these types of games are fast, so the faster that you can recognize them in the chaos of it all, the better. Almost every enemy also has variants that are stronger than the one before. And they also have new properties too, that makes fighting them a bit more difficult. Like having more armor so you have to beat them up some more before you can get your hands on them and rip them apart. They're mostly pretty fun to fight, except these ones. These things are fucking annoying. And not just annoying, they're actually pretty dangerous too. When these things appear, expect the next minute to be you trying to get your hands on them before moving on to the other baddies. Because if you don't deal with them first, they will ruin your day. Back to the other enemies that actually like to fight, the Minotaurs. They're in the medium-sized category, which means you can wall bounce them and do all sorts of horrible things to them while still having a bit of challenge. There's also multiple enemy types that forces you to be more creative in killing them. Like the Onyx Soldier, that requires you to use the cestus to break their shields first. Or use the finisher of another enemy, in this case, a Medusa, to petrify them before you break them apart, completely ignoring their shields. Another rememberable one is the Siren, which can only be made tangible by slashing them with the head. Then you can go to town with them. There's also the big types, like the Cyclops. There's basically these huge threats that you just have to wail on because he's impervious to launchers and juggles. Because, well, they're pretty big. Until the big circle comes up, then you can turn the tables by riding them, then crushing the Cyclops' erstwhile companions. There's also some weird enemies, like the satyrs. Fun-looking things that can block your attacks, including from the Blade of fucking Olympus. I repeat, these Mr. Thumbnails-looking assets are able to block from the Blade of fucking Olympus. Who are they? Why are they so strong? Are they secretly Jiren? They are by far the hardest enemy in the game, I think. You can kinda cheese them by keep grabbing them, but it doesn't work if there's another baddie who wants a piece of the pie. Your pie. They say that variety is the spice of life. What they don't say is that variety is the spice of blood and guts too. And God of War 3 has more than enough of that in the normal enemy types. But there's still one type of enemy that I haven't talked about. What's a character action game without bosses? Nothing, because that's just blasphemy. One of the things that the God of War series is famous for is its epic boss battles. From the Hydra to the Colossus of Rhodes, and Boulder, but that hasn't happened yet. Does God of War 3's boss fight still holds up in today's gaming? The short answer is yes. The long answer is holy shit yes. It doesn't matter that the game came out like decades ago, the bosses are still pretty awe-inspiring. In terms of boss fights, I think this game has the strongest boss fights in the entire God of War franchise. Again, I haven't played Ragnarok, but these boss fights are pretty amazing. You got the more mano-a-mano fights, you got the absolutely titanic boss fights, you got the giant enemy scorpion. This was pretty disappointing though, not gonna lie. All the boss fights were pretty memorable, and some of them required different strats, other than, bashing their brains in. Of the mano-a-mano fights, Hercules and Zeus really stands out. I really like the fight with Hercules, or Heracles if you're a nerd, who's actually voiced by Kevin Sorbo, aka the guy that plays Hercules in the old TV series. This fight is so fun. It challenges you on crowd control, enemy prioritization, and just plain skill. Still, I do wish it was a true 1v1 fight, but it's still pretty fun. Though the final boss Zeus was kinda disappointing at the end. He was fun during the first phase where you're just fighting him 1v1, but then he just started pulling out shadow clones non-stop, which I don't really like that much, especially when it's used for the final boss. But I do love the callback to old motifs in the music they place in this fight. It brings the series full circle, that this is the end, until 2018 that is. I forgot to talk about this at the beginning during the presentation part because I'm an idiot, but it's something just as important as the others. When it's good, it's not usually noticed, but if it's bad, people will talk. Can you guess what it is? No, it's not games journalism, it's actually sound design. The sound design in this game is pretty great. Like every hit feels good, the sound of meat getting cleaved, and the sounds of bones crunching. Things like the Sextus Shockwave attack feel so good to use because of it. The audio quality is pretty crisp too, so no low quality sounds like what you hear in Ubisoft games for some reason. Except this time when Kratos redlines the audio.
A true warrior does not hide, Poseidon! Leave the sea and face me! You have disrespect.
And the music, holy shit, it's like you're fighting gods, which is exactly what you're doing in this game. And we got variety too, like the haunting Pandora's theme. The really threatening rage of Sparta, which signals someone's about to get hurt a lot. Some themes from the early ages also came back, like Zeus' Wrath Divine being remixed into Brothers of Blood, which is just epic. All in all, I don't find any faults in the sound department. But then again, what? There's liquid dripping from my ears. Wait, is this blood? Well, the story is usually not the strongest part of a God of War game until 2018. But here's the premise anyway. The game picks up directly after the end of God of War 2, where Kratos starts a second Titanomachy, Maki, whatever, the rumbling, by saving the Titans from the past after gaining the power of time travel, and starts mounting a siege on Mount Olympus instead of, saving his family from himself, saving himself before he makes a deal with Ares, or go further back into the past so he can save his brother Deimos from being kidnapped. But that's just how Kratos rolls. Shockingly enough, it didn't go well. Probably because the Titans have already lost a less experienced version of the gods, and now they're fighting a leveled up version of the gods by sequence breaking, which go as well as you'd expect. Kratos and Gaia fell off, Gaia refused to help Kratos, telling him he's just a pawn for the Titans, and Kratos fell off even further, somehow forgetting that he has Icarus wings. He fell so hard he fell into the underworld. Imagine that you fell off so hard that you knocked him through the earth and fell directly into hell. That's what happened to Kratos. Then a bunch of spooky sucked his powers out and devoured him. Kratos is almost back to zero at this point, but then Athena's ghost lends a helping hand, fixes his blades, then urges him to kill Zeus, which is a bit weird because she died protecting Zeus, but that's fine. No hidden agenda at all. And so Kratos begins his journey to kill Zeus and the gods of Olympus again. The actual plot was okay enough, but not as decent as the second one. The game still tries to make you care a bit about Kratos' plight, even if he became too much of an asshole monster for me to sympathize with him at this point. But he's still entertaining to watch though, especially if he just came back from God of War 2018. You can directly see how much he has changed from this game to that game. Here, Kratos is at his most unlikable. He's basically the villain at this point. He's also much louder,
A true warrior
which is just how he was in the Greek games. Oh, that Kratos screaming Zeus's name again. But interestingly enough, you can see the cracks in Kratos' asshole attitude that will eventually turn into Kratos that we see in 2018. There's still some goodness in him, but it's buried deep under all that rage and his never my fault demeanor that blames everyone except himself, when the reason that the entire series happened was because of him accepting the deal with Ares. And then it all goes downhill from there. The plot and pacing itself weren't bad, but it does suffer from being the last battle in Olympus. And because of that, time frame of things happening can get a bit wonky sometimes, like how Kratos changes his opinion on what he should do to Pandora, even though he's dead set on killing Zeus, which requires sacrificing Pandora to open her box again, so that Kratos can kill Zeus. At least that's what he thought. And he changed his mind pretty fast. Not to mention the entire Hope theme with him and Pandora. Like, I understand that Kratos isn't exactly the picture of mental stability and has daughter issues, but it's just a bit weird, that's all. I do like how he manages to be a bit civil with Hephaestus though. Kratos can at least see that he's just protecting his daughter, so he's far more respectful to him, even when he tries to kill him. But in the end, that sacrifice turns out to be for nothing, because Kratos has the power in him all along. We really are the Space Jam. He just lacks the motivation for it. I mean, Kratos should already knew about this when the inscription in the box was the power to kill a god, which he already did multiple times before at this point, so he should have known that he still has the power to kill gods even after he fell into the underworld for like the 5th time and got depowered again. The game did try to justify that killing Zeus is different than killing the other gods, but that's bullshit, because Kratos almost killed him at the end of God of War 2. The only reason he's still alive now was because Athena protected him. Even though he didn't bring God of War 2's final confrontation to the equation, Kratos' first encounter with Zeus didn't end with Zeus completely destroying him like how Virgil completely destroyed Dante in DMC3. He just rings him out with Gaia, which was a bit anticlimactic, not gonna lie. But it does beg the question, is Kratos at this point too angry or stupid to realize that he has the power to kill Zeus all along? Maybe. Probably. But in the end, Kratos does realize how much he messed up and tries to make amends by unleashing the power of hope and giving the world a second chance. This time, without gods ruling over them, by committing Sudoku, releasing the power of hope inside him into the world, ruining Athena's chance to rule the world in the process. But not before giving Athena a scare, because Kratos is a prankster. Anyway, how about that reveal, huh? That Kratos was actually the one that turns the Greek gods from bad to worse by unleashing the evils of the Pandora's box. That will later infect the gods of Olympus, which, surprise surprise, includes Athena. That really put things into perspective on how much the entire series was his fault and Ares. And if you've only played God of War 2018, this is one of the biggest reasons why he's becoming so regretful about killing his father Zeus. This is especially true in the earlier versions, where Zeus actually apologizes to Kratos and wants him to end him after his evil, fear, got beaten out of him.
Kratos. Kratos, my son. Kratos, my son. I'm sorry. Release me.
And you can see this in the game, but not the cut dialogue. Kratos in the end finally realizes how much he's at fault for all the pain and suffering he inadvertently caused in his path of revengeance. And also accidentally destroying the entire world, or at least the realm where Greece resides in. Yeah, that too. Because every time Kratos kills a god, their domain goes out of control or becomes malevolent. That's an whoopsie doodles. But what about the gods themselves? They're certainly impressive, except Hermes, who's just a wannabe Sonic. And while we don't really spend a lot of time with them, except for Zeus and Helios, they're still pretty memorable. Most of the characterizations were put into notes or other games, which is definitely not the best way to go about it, but I understand it is to keep the pacing tight. The other supporting characters weren't so lucky though, especially Pandora. Gaia gets horribly brain damage compared to her characterization in 2. Hephaestus only gets the characterization of being bitter, but protective of his daughter, which does make Kratos begrudgingly respectful of him, because he sees himself in him, and his death is the less brutal deicide that Kratos did in the game, and also because he was forced to, not because he enjoys it like with the other gods, which was a nice moment of characterization for Kratos. Pandora though, woo. She's an important character, but acts more like a living MacGuffin, which she literally is. Someone to make Kratos feel bad and have him believe in hope in a very ham-fisted way. At least her theme's great though. And unfortunately, the game commits one of the biggest heresy a character action game can do, and that's not having a New Game Plus mode. You can still play New Game Plus, kind of, but the method is pretty scuffed and there's no way to do it normally. Only simulating it through finding collectibles or using the glitch. It's not great. Also, after beating the game, you will unlock new harder difficulties, Titan and Chaos mode. Sadly though, higher difficulty levels doesn't really change anything significant, like the enemy placement, adding new moves to the baddies, or giving them additional properties. It just beefs up their health, their speed, their aggro, their damage by a considerable degree. It's just a stat up thing, which is the most boring way to go about it. And because there's no New Game Plus, officially at least, you will always play these new difficulties with baby Kratos, which is just not fun for me. I like to play games in the highest difficulty with all the tools available, so I can really push the game to its limit, while it's also pushing me to my limit at the same time, after beating the game in the intended experience. Instead of, starting over from the very beginning at a higher difficulty. Call me a poor piece baby casual all you want, but that's just how I feel, and I will die on this hill. Also, the set piece battles where Kratos fights a boss while hanging becomes insufferable on higher difficulties, with Kratos dying in 1 or 2 hits, while your capabilities is severely limited. It stops being challenging fun and starts being really annoying to fight. But still, after everything though, game's still pretty damn good. Don't know what else to say, but it's definitely worth a play if you haven't played it, even after all these years. And in my opinion, this game has the best combat in all God of War games so far. With that said though, the story is the worst of the mainline games, with the weird pacing, characters acting really idiotic for no reason and without any foreshadowing, rushed character developments, and some pretty weak supporting characters. The story pretty much feels like a bloated climax for God of War 2, instead of its own game, with its own beginning, middle, and end. Even with the weak story though, I didn't feel the 8 hours I took beating this game in one sitting. And it's definitely different than the more grounded and muted sequel. So give it a whirl if you haven't, because I know a lot of people only started getting into God of War through the more recent entries. It didn't give Kratos' past games a chance, which is a shame, because they're still pretty fun games even to this day. Thanks for watching. This is where I shall ask you to like, share, and subscribe, because it will really help the channel. But I'm too tired right now, so I'm just gonna sleep and blame Zeus for everything. See you later, hopefully.